When was it that you started becoming aware of chemophobia as like an umbrella term?
I had an eye-opening moment, honestly, not that long ago, which maybe is like embarrassing, but I think I wrote this article in the fall. I was talking to a public health expert. She's great, for a different story. And I said something about natural deodorant just in passing because
Sure.
I was on a quest for natural deodorant.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, why are you on a quest for natural deodorant? And I was like, what do you mean? I don't know. Because social media told me I do.
Welcome back to Making It Awkward. I'm Jessica Wilson, clinical dietitian and author of It's Always Been Ours. You can find me on Instagram at jessicawilson.msrd, and you can watch this show on YouTube. This is a fully independent podcast supported only by members of the Patreon, getting its funding only from that community, not from ads. You can email the pod at makingitawkwardpod@gmail.com. A quick podcast update before we get into my interview with HuffPost journalist Jillian Wilson. In my work to get this podcast out weekly, while working as a clinical dietitian and having a 6-hour commute to the clinic on Thursdays, I haven't had time in the last 3 years to properly build the podcast audience, put clips of my amazing guests on social media, and be able to market the pod to make it sustainable. The conversations here have truly changed the course of my work and our learning, from my ultra-processed food experiment coverage to the recent DC trip to forming and building my relationship with farmer in residence Trampus Harmon and learning how important SNAP is to rural farmers. I want to bring all of that to more listeners, follows, and potentially funders. As such, I'll be putting out new episodes every other week going forward as I do more behind the scenes work. I'm so very grateful for the members of the Patreon community for helping fund the work of our fearless editor, Jen Jacobs. And it would be phenomenal if we could build the Patreon community enough to support my time as well, ultimately making this podcast sustainable. Another way to help out is by rating the pod and leaving an Apple Podcast review so others can see that we have an engaged audience. Thanks so much for your support. Today's episode is with journalist Jillian Wilson. I reached out to her after reading her article titled "More and More People Suffer from Chemophobia, and MAHA is Partly to Blame." Her article was incredibly thorough and well-researched. She breaks down the history of the fear tactic of chemophobia and how it strikes a nerve with both conservatives and liberals alike. She tells us how she approaches her science reporting in this episode, which is as impressive as it is encouraging. A quick note that in our pre-show conversation, we discussed the pronunciation and landed on chemophobia versus chemophobia. In Jillian's conversations with experts, it was pronounced both ways. We landed on chemophobia for this conversation. Jillian happened to join the show following her recent presentation at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention. She spoke on a panel about how to report on MAHA and shares that experience on the pod today. And I get to ask her about why chemicals are inherently associated with fear in this country and the breakdown of science literacy. Her entry point to reflecting on chemophobia came last year during her quest for a natural deodorant, and I share the most ridiculous thing that I have done when caught up in Bay Area chemophobia. This episode topic was inspired by my recent episode with the Conscious Lee, which highlighted his lack of science literacy and also his comfort speaking so loudly about chemicals without context or understanding. Among many concerns, his argument relied on chemophobia and furthered the narrative that any kind of chemical is scary. Something that I really appreciated from my chat with Jillian is that she challenged the way that I think about nutrition articles that seem to cycle in and out of the news for months, if not years, and showed me the value of continuing to critique the same thing, especially for people who aren't on social media. And with that, Jillian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. In our pre-show, you gave me a quick sneak peek at what you've been up to, and I need you to tell us all about it right now.
Yes. So last week I was at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Atlanta, and I spoke on a panel about reporting on MAHA and how to do so responsibly and also in a way that specifically, that is fair to like our Black readers also, because we know MAHA doesn't necessarily consider social determinants of health. And we know those social determinants of health impact Black communities more than white communities. So I did a whole panel about that with two other people, one from CNN, one from iHeartMedia. And we spoke about reporting on MAHA and the challenges we face and the advice we have for other journalists. And we got some interesting questions from the audience. One person was someone who was a little vaccine hesitant, to say the least. And so that was interesting, just very hesitant about the COVID shot specifically in Fauci. So we had to respond to that, which was honestly a bit of a shock because most of our audience were like nodding their heads and agreeing. And I think also feeling some of the frustrations that many of us feel in this field. But yeah, he was a shock. I think we handled it as well as possible. And I also don't want to, it's like walking the fine line of not being preachy either, right? Because I don't want him to be like, to feel attacked by journalists telling him to get vaccinated or something like that. Because I feel like that was part of the issue. So I feel like journalists we do walk this fine line of like, we need to make sure we're getting out the right information in a way that isn't preachy, because we know vaccine, like that is like an emotional decision someone makes. You can't just, it's not like a math problem to fix. It's an emotional decision. So it was kind of like walking this fine line of like not making him feel less than, but also making sure we turn up the narrative of him saying things like the mRNA vaccine was rushed, which is just not true. It was in development for decades before COVID. And it's miraculous that we even had it. So it was an adventure.
Did the three of you on the panel get together and decide what you were going to talk about initially, or was it mostly Q&A?
Yeah, so the panel idea was actually mine, and I'm part of the Science and Health Task Force for National Association of Black Journalists. So we submitted a bunch of panel ideas. One of them was this one that I submitted, and then a few of us from the task force decided we wanted to talk about it. And we met a couple times ahead of time just to make sure we were all on the same page and kind of like could bounce off of each other. I know not all panels involve practice, but I feel like this was one of my first panels I've ever done. So I was like, I would like to practice. And the other girls felt the same way. And I think it truly helped. Like I feel like we were able to bounce off each other and like, no, someone was covering vaccines while someone else was covering food dyes. So it was like a nice way to go about it.
I love it. Are you able to share anything that you or the other folks talked about on the panel? I'm just very curious.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about, gosh, I'm trying to remember now. It's like, it's only a week ago.
I get it. I kind of black out after.
Like you finish a presentation and it's like done. But we talked a lot about the responsibility we feel, particularly as Black journalists, because, you know, the Trump administration is overwhelmingly white and male. So it's like, you know, there are things that as Black journalists, we want to make sure are getting across to either our Black audiences or our other BIPOC communities that, like, you know, so much of MAHA is individual. So much of it comes from a privileged perspective. So we wanted to make sure we're making sure that gets across to our readers. And like, if they feel guilty that they can't afford the thing that MAHA says they should be doing, like, that's not a fair thing to feel guilty about. Like, public health should be for everyone. And it's too bad that this MAHA movement is changing that in a sense and making it feel very individual and almost like if you get sick, it's almost like your own fault or something.
Oh, yeah.
So we really wanted to get that point across. And then also just talk about the difficulties we're facing when it comes to, I mean, not to go back to vaccines, but like anti-vaccine rhetoric and what we're seeing in comments and on social media. And, you know, I think there was just a news article today, was it? I think about how vaccination rates in kindergarten are plummeting. And of course, we see that with the measles outbreak right now, where measles cases are at their highest point in 35 years. So yeah, I feel like it was kind of this nice space because most people in the audience are journalists or PR who are looking to work with journalists. So it was just kind of like this nice, mostly protected space where we could all kind of commiserate and just like share our insight and guidance for this time when we're like, half of our job is just cleaning up misinformation from the highest people in the government, which is hard. It's like, it's really, really hard. And why would an average person believe a publication over the president or the Health and Human Services secretary?
Or somebody cute online on social media.
Yeah. Right.
Why wouldn't I believe them?
Yeah. With a quick, like, little non-nuanced black and white take that you can be like, oh, I learned this thing in 30 seconds and now I'm a genius and I know everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And then the person in the audience, did they approach asking like a genuine question, or were they like the actually or but, or like, was it an actual question, or was it like their personal opinion about what you said?
Yeah. It was a statement. So they started it with just kind of like, this isn't really a question for any one of you. It's more and I was like, okay, I wasn't even skeptical at that point. But yeah, then it just kind of started into like the Fauci can't even testify. The mRNA vaccine was rushed. I know a lot of doctors who don't even recommend it, which just full stop. I've never ever talked to a doctor who does not recommend the COVID vaccine or an mRNA vaccine. If anything, they're thrilled about it and wished we had more mRNA shots, which we now have another one. We have a flu shot that's mRNA, which is great. But yeah, and then he also said something about how people who didn't get the COVID shot in 2020 are actually looking like they're the smart ones and they're the ones who made the right choice. So we were all just kind of looking at him, like the panelists and I, we were just like, what do we say? Mm-hmm. It was tough. But it was fine. And once again, I also don't want to come off as like, how dare he think this way? Because we know why people think this way and we know who to blame, and it's like you can't fault someone for having vaccine hesitancy when Trump and RFK Jr. are falsely linking vaccines to anything they can, you know? Mm-hmm. So literally, I can't even blame him. And it's like, I can't blame him. And it's only going to make it worse if I do blame him. Mm-hmm. Him as in the audience member, not Trump and RFK.
Sure. Definitely. Something that I've said and discussed recently is that like our inherent ability to interpret science, if we're not taught how to do it, is just not there. And the expectations that the people that we listen to have science literacy is not required anymore. And how somebody can read like a singular paper and decide like this is the final truth, or somebody online, or a doctor who's yelling very loudly like he has credentials, therefore he is the authoritative like being on this topic. And I have found that a lot of journalists don't know how to interpret studies and often take one study and report on that study as if it is the truth and the whole truth. That one is really rough for me too. So the panel you were discussing and like the approaches you've taken sound so much like well and better balanced when it comes to all of this that I find incredibly lacking sometimes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tough. And I think in journalism school, they don't teach you how to read a scientific paper. Right. But I think it's someone who's a health or science reporter, it's on them to learn it. And if you are still, and sometimes I write about brain health, and that is really complicated. And with those, I'm like, I can read the study as much as I want, but there are still going to be things I need to triple check. So I really do reach out to 3 doctors and make sure that I'm understanding things, make sure I'm understanding the limitations and that they're sharing their takes on it from what they see in day-to-day work. And that's so important because, no one study is the end-all be-all, right? And but I do think a lot of people, whether journalists or I think I even see it more with like wellness influencers, they take one study and they just like run with it and don't look at the fact that it was funded by some company, like, some company that's going to benefit from this. Mm-hmm. Or don't think about the fact that the sample size was 8 people or something,
Yes. Yeah. Truly and literally. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for your work. Yeah, I brought you here to talk about MAHA and chemophobia, but this is just a very delightful opening. So thank you.
Of course.
When was it that you started like becoming aware of chemophobia as like an umbrella term? Because like there are a lot of like dog whistles and like very clear messaging about how chemicals are bad, but like, was there a point before your reporting that you connected like chemophobia to all of these conversations?
I had an eye-opening moment, honestly, not that long ago. Maybe it's like embarrassing, but I think I wrote this article in the fall, so October of 2025. And I would say probably in this, like maybe a little over a year ago, last spring, I was talking to a public health expert. She's great, for a different story, completely unrelated. And we're kind of like friendly. So we were just chatting. And I said something about natural deodorant just in passing because I was on a quest for natural deodorant. And she was like, why are you on a quest for natural deodorant? And I was like, what do you mean? I don't know. Because social media told me I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just opened and we talked about it a bit, and she was so nice about it. And I think she is the one who first said chemophobia to me. She's like, she was like, I see this all the time online and it's so tough. She's like, it's tricked me in the past too. And she was like, and I still battle with it. Anyway, so it just completely opened my eyes, and I was like, why am I looking for natural deodorant? Or why am I like convincing myself I need quote unquote clean beauty, or listening to a friend's advice about cleaning products or something like that are, cleaning products that aren't going to harm you. And then I just kind of like was doing some Googling, and chemophobia came up. I'd never heard the term before, truly, but it also is like, there are so many dog whistles that within it, there are so many things, even well before MAHA. It's like, this has been something that I can think back to friends, parents saying things like, we have to eat organic. We have to eat organic apples, whatever it is. Or I can think back to, just certain, like people being afraid of chemicals in lotions or whatever it is. And I think it's so fascinating because it's so complicated, because it's such a scare tactic. So it's hard not to feel emotional about these things. If you're told that something is causing harm to you or your family or your kids, of course you're going to want to cut it out of your life. But then, most people don't do the research to look into how is it harmful? Is it actually harmful? And of course there are harmful chemicals out there. That's very true. But everything is a chemical. I'm chemicals. I'm made up of chemicals. So it's like, you can't be anti-chemical because everything that exists is made up of chemicals. And that, I think, it opened my eyes to so much and really made me think about like why I'm making some of the choices I'm making, or why I'm falling down these rabbit holes. And I'm like, gosh, if I'm falling down these rabbit holes and I feel like pretty good media literacy and can spot certain scare tactics, it's like everyone else. It's just, I feel like I owe it to them to share this information with them.
That's amazing. I love that. I was not expecting your article when I started searching for who would be a great guest to bring. I was like, this article is long. Like, there are multiple people cited in here. This is there's so many hyperlinks. I was like, okay, so the journalists, the people are out there. This is amazing. I'm not just looking at some random person's blog, or maybe not even random, like somebody well informed, but like you've like done the dive. I was so excited, and I'm so glad that you were willing to come on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And the fact that the article is long, I think, is actually a barrier that journalists currently face when it comes to any MAHA-related topic. Because, of course, people want the 30-second Instagram reel or TikTok video telling them what is right and what is wrong, what is bad, what is good. But we also know things are nuanced. And most of these topics can't be summed up in 20, 30 seconds unless you're fear-mongering, right?
Yeah.
Or trying to sell something.
Sure.
So I think that's a challenge with journalism right now.
Yeah. If you were going to do it in 30 seconds or 3 minutes, what do you think you would say about chemicals?
Chemicals. That is, okay. So I will say, like, this whole chemophobia anti-chemical movement is not based in science. And it's super pervasive, and it exists on all sides of the political spectrum. It started on the left with kind of like, I think we can all picture like the kind of hippie movement of like organic, let's not give in to like these evil market forces. Let's do our own thing. Let's take our own supplements and make our own creams and powders and whatnot. But it has since moved, and it still exists there, but it has since moved to the right to also be MAHA. This idea that like the FDA, the CDC, the EPA are quote unquote hiding things from you about what's in your food or what's in your water or air or whatever it is, and that we need to, or vaccines, that's a big one. And we need to not do these things or take this modern medicine in order to be healthy. And essentially, it's like, once again, very individualistic. It's like you take your health in your own hands. You are responsible for your health.
Yeah.
And no one can tell you what to do. So it's like two very different sides of the spectrum. And I think the bigger voices right now are the MAHA movement, I would say. I feel like the left-leaning side is, I feel like, a little quieter currently, but the right-leaning side, where it's the anti-vaccine, anti-science, anti-doctors, I feel like that's very, very loud right now. And it's scary because we are seeing the fallout when it comes to measles in this country, or parents not opting in for vitamin K shots for their babies, and those babies are then having brain bleeds. Like, these are real issues. And and essentially it's just, I think chemophobia is this desire to go back to nature, go back to what life was. And one of the people I talked to from my article, Andrea Love, she said that, the reality is we were dying younger, we were dying sicker, and often in pain during those times, years ago. We don't want to go back to what that was. And of course, we do have health problems now. We have chronic health issues in this country and every other country, but focusing on something like food dyes is a distraction from the things that actually matter, like universal health care, access to healthy food, housing equity, housing security, education. It's like cutting out like a food dye isn't going to do anything if you can't afford to go to the doctor.
I mean, it's also not going to do anything because it's just a chemical. Also, it's not going to do. True. Both are true. It's not going to help, and it's not going to help. But at that point in your article, I started writing down the things that just my dad has told me. So he was born in late 40s, which makes him 117 years old. But he would tell me about how he was given turpentine for colds. Like, they would get a spoonful of turpentine. Like, and that's a chemical. That's, depending on where you get it from, it can be also natural. But we don't do that anymore. He would also tell me in science class, like, they would empty out the thermometers, the mercury thermometers, and just like hold the mercury and like move it around in their hands and stuff like that. And, of course, I'm like, Dad, do people have autism? Like, do you and all your friends have autism from that? And he's like, no, we don't. Okay.
No, they don't, because no one researched it back then. So no one had autism if you're not looking into it.
Right.
Right.
Mercury, natural, right? On the periodic table of chemicals there. Like, we see it.
Arsenic is natural. Right?
It's natural.
Yeah.
So the appeal to nature fallacy, the chemophobia. But what do you think it is about chemicals that sound so scary? There's an emotional response to chemicals when people yell at us about them that I feel like we don't have to other things. And I'm not sure how chemical became a bad or scary word, because we really all are chemicals. I don't know.
Yeah. I know, it's tough because, the emotion that comes out when you hear the word chemical is fear, or like, get that away from me.
Yeah.
And Timothy Caulfield, someone I interviewed for this article, we were chatting, and has explained how there's such a breakdown in science literacy in this country and in this world. And people really don't know what a chemical is. So there was a quote that he said that didn't actually make it into the article. He was looking at a study recently that found that people were asked if they wanted to live in a world without chemicals. And a high percentage of people said they did want to live in a world without chemicals, which just shows the lack of science literacy, because I'm made of chemicals. My chair is made of chemicals. So it's not possible to live in a world with no chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live in a world with no chemicals,
we don't exist.
Yeah, we don't exist. So I just think there's such a breakdown of science literacy in this country and beyond. And it's just and I think that is why people are afraid of chemicals, because they hear chemical spills, right? And that is bad. That's a bad thing. Or they think of, like chemical burns, like those types of things. But they aren't thinking about the fact that our bodies are made of chemicals. The chair I'm sitting in is made of chemicals. So I think that has a lot to do with it. If you don't understand something, of course, it's scary.
Yeah. No, it's the chemical burns. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I think that brands then capitalize on that and they say things like toxin free or chemical free or additive free or whatever it is. And people are then like, okay, then toxins are bad. Toxins, I guess maybe are, I don't, but it's like additives are bad, toxins are bad, chemicals are bad. And it just oversimplifies these things.
You just had me thinking that if I saw something was fill in the blank free, all of a sudden I'd be worried about whatever that was.
Yeah. I think that's the point.
Huh. Yeah. Toxin free. Or like, even I'm not as susceptible to it, but like I can see how gluten free, like it does look good to people, right? Because we've been gluten free is on a package and therefore it's got to be healthier. I've seen gluten free milk. I'm like, LOL.
My gosh.
But if that's a marketing tool, like I can see it. Being on the West Coast and like at a UC and being relatively close to San Francisco and Berkeley. And for whatever reason, I was really drawn to like hippie, like life and, not necessarily thinking about it from like a toxin free perspective, but I definitely remember people thinking that shampoo was a scam. And so they were using like apple cider vinegar instead of shampoo to wash. And then how moisturizers or like conditioners were a scam. So using olive oil instead. And these are people of color also. These are not only white folks. These are also people of color who are just putting salad dressing, making salad dressing on their hair. And that's hard not to, to question like, oh, does apple cider vinegar really wash my hair? FYI, no. Right. But it sounds good. I totally tried it. My spouse was not happy. Like we didn't get a divorce. Yeah. But it could have happened. No, it didn't. It didn't work. And olive oil, don't recommend. Also, it creates weird buildup. But
yeah, I'm sure.
I was old. I was too old to be trying those things and believing those things. But
it's hard. It's hard to separate what's real and what's not real. And some of these things are also passed down from generations. And you may think, oh, my grandmother always did this thing. Of course it's right. Or my grandmother said this ingredient is bad. Of course it's bad. So it's also like, this has been something that has existed for a really long time. And just this appeal to nature fallacy. I think people are always into this idea of like nature and natural is whatever natural is, whatever that means, is better. And I think it can be cultural, it can be, political forces. And I think that's why it's so pervasive, because sure, someone could tell me something I don't care about isn't backed in science. But if someone says like this recipe for this hair mask that my mom has told me to use for years isn't, it's emotional.
Yeah. And if somebody is pretty, right? Like, or hot or has, muscle mass that I want, I really believe them.
Yeah, the aspirational life that they have, right? It's like, if they're doing it, I should do it.
I should totally be doing this. I should have a beige or grayish kitchen also. Yes, the color is gone, but interesting. Do you have, quote, natural deodorant right now?
No.
Okay.
No, I went with Dove.
You were like, I'm looking at the prices here and I'm going with Dove. Yeah,
exactly. No, I didn't. And then like I did Googling after the fact. I mean, I fully believe the person who told me, not to fall for it, but I was like, I just want to look into it and see what myths I was believing. Yeah. And essentially just like the science, for aluminum free isn't there. It's like, that isn't something I need to be focusing on and isn't going to make a difference in my health.
Yeah. And I have looked at like natural deodorants, and they're full of chemicals. Like,
Yes, of course.
yes, if you have body odor and you want to prevent it, that doesn't happen just, with some apple cider vinegar or whatever, or some essential oils. That's not how it works. So, yeah. Right. Hmm. Is there anything that worries you on social media these days?
Yeah, a lot of it. I think social media, it takes the nuance out of everything. It takes, a claim and it runs with it. And these like quick fear-based claims spread like wildfire on social media. They will have millions of views in a matter of hours, and people sharing it with friends and family and kids and neighbors. So I think that's really scary because it's really hard for journalists to combat that when it's so prevalent online. And there are some people who also believe everything they see online is real.
Yeah.
And that is scary. It's like the person who's saying they're a wellness influencer, you don't actually know their credentials. They likely don't have any. And they also are probably profiting off the fear. You're probably buying their supplements, or you're buying their, whatever greens powders they're selling, whatever it is, they're profiting off of you. And also even the views, they're profiting off the views. And they know the more views they get, the more money they can get. So they want to make it as clicky and as scary as possible. And I think that's just really dangerous and is prevalent all over social media. It is, I think, just truly, just exploded. And there's so much, like, people are oversimplifying information on there. And people are really using it as medical advice and making decisions about this. And I think also on social media, when you market something as quote unquote natural, like a supplement, even though supplements are of course chemicals, they're also largely unregulated. So that's scary. But when someone hears the word supplement, they think it's natural. They're like, oh, this is fine. I can just take this, not knowing if it could interfere with their medications they're on, or if they have allergies to it, or, what's the source? Where are you buying it from? How is it made? And those just aren't questions people are asking. And I think that's really scary, and it's detrimental to our health. At best, it's a waste of money. At worst, it's going to make you sick.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned folks hearing it, passing it on to family and kids. And then oftentimes I'll see this like gap where media perhaps tries to correct this, but it's like days or weeks later and like the cycle has passed. But one that kept coming around was intermittent fasting. And I can't remember how long ago. It was months, if not years, but still like years into intermittent fasting discourse. And somebody called asking to interview me about it. And I was like, I think this is the problem. Like, you are validating that people want to know about this by giving them information on it. So one, I'm not going to do it, but also I don't think that you should lend, credibility or interest or attention to something that has been largely unhelpful, debunked, and like, you're saying to skip breakfast. Half of the people are already doing that. Like, what are you doing? This is not helpful. But
So wait, someone reached out to you, like a journalist?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's tough because I think sometimes we see those things spreading on social media and we want to combat it, and I understand that, it gives it, in a sense, I don't want to say legitimacy, but if someone skims and sees a headline, doesn't actually click the article, and they say, oh, HuffPost wrote about intermittent fasting, it must be legitimate. But it's probably, the article says the exact opposite. So I can understand how it can feel like it's making it feel more legitimate. But I think like we often, and me personally, I see some of this stuff online and I'm like, we need to combat this. This isn't real. This is, going to harm people's health or waste their money. So it's like it's this tough line you have to walk of like, what do you do? It's like, do you just let it spread and just like watch people fall for these things and hope they eventually realize it's wrong? Or do you correct it and then worry that people maybe just see the headline as you mentioned, the article I wrote about this, chemophobia, was long. It's like, is someone going to read the whole thing? Or are they going to just see the headline and be like, okay, yeah, whatever. I saw that on social media already. I'm good.
I really liked it because you had MAHA in the title, which made me like way more interested in what you were going to say. So, I mean, that made yours far more relevant than I think a lot of articles are. I think when I had Jamie Ducharme, journalist, on the show, I asked her what the heck is happening with a lot of nutrition stuff, which, by and large tends to be like the eat clean, don't eat junk food. It's like, woo! That was brilliant. But she said oftentimes, like, the advice does not change. So people are just like dancing around it in different ways, like eat fruits and vegetables and fiber. But then some study, say, about ultra processed foods comes out, and that's another just like villain for us to say the same things, like eat fruits and vegetables, eat more fiber. But I don't know. I'm excited about articles like yours a lot of the time. And then I go and I'm sad about others a lot of the time too. So it's rough out there.
And people are bored by the things that they are told for years work for our health, right? They're bored. They don't want to hear about exercise and diet and cholesterol and blood pressure and sleep and not drinking alcohol and not smoking. Like, they don't want to hear that. And like, I don't blame them. I know. And, but those are in reality the things that matter most. And then also the step further is also factoring in social determinants of health and realizing that not everyone is able to just walk outside and go for a walk in their neighborhood or, an avocado toast or whatever, So, sorry, my millennial just showed, but, so I think, it's like those factors on top of like the more like societal public health issues that really chemophobia just distract us from, and MAHA allows to distract, right? Like, they don't want to talk about the fact that, Trump is allowing, I forget the name of the chemicals in Roundup.
Glyphosate.
Yeah, like something like he's like easing restrictions on that. I may need to fact check myself on that before I just say that out loud. But
yes, glyphosate. And he passed an executive order saying that the production and use of Roundup/glyphosate is essential for the security of this nation, which will be overseen by our esteemed leader, Pete Hegseth.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Right. So great. So things like that, or, refusing to, or, taking away Medicaid from people or taking away SNAP benefits. And it's like, doing all of these huge societally dangerous things for our health, but then just focusing our attention on beef tallow or seed oil.
Yeah. Red dye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being a distraction. And it's really frustrating because, like, then once again, people feel at fault if they get sick.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, no, and it's just sad to see that, like, that is the reality we're living in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have multiple patients who are trying to buy, quote, real food. One has increased their caffeine intake. These are just like people that I've seen in the last month. So they can skip meals because it's an appetite suppressant. So they can afford real food for these other meals. Another patient is taking, she called it Crystal, so that it'll suppress her appetite, so she won't need to eat. I've had patients using Klarna for their groceries because they don't have enough money for them. So they'll have like a variety of Klarna, like successions of needing to pay off groceries like back then to get, real food. Like, how this is not healthy again. Right? The things that the people are doing and hearing are making people feel bad for buying processed foods. So what they're doing is not eating or going into debt in order to eat these real foods, which, they could have just eaten the quote food with chemicals, aka additives, and, be fed.
It's sad. It is wild and it's sad. And it's just, I feel like after writing this article, I just see how much of a distraction it is from the things that actually matter in public health. But once again, it appeals to people's emotions, and it also capitalizes on this lack of science literacy, and it makes it really hard to fight against.
Yeah. Something we haven't specifically mentioned is the conspiracy theories that got our administration, especially HHS, into power, and the science literacy, the lacking science literacy that made not just like lies, but like wild, outlandish claims sound like they could be true is, it's baffling. And again, very sad, as you've said. But yeah, science literacy, but also like not trusting people. You mentioned Black folks at the beginning and how we may be more distrustful of medicine for a variety of reasons. So there's, extra vulnerability there.
I know.
So what ideas do you have going forward for things that people on social media and journalists could do?
People on social media, I think there are always going to be, for as long as social media is around, and who knows how much longer it's going to be around, I feel like it's almost going to implode. I don't know. I think it might be better for society if it does. But there will be influencers on there making money off of views and fear mongering for as long as it exists. That's not going to go away. And the powers that be don't seem to want to correct any of the narratives on there or limit posting when the information isn't accurate. So I feel like that's not going to go anywhere. So I think I follow quite a few, yourself included, like public health, people with expertise, doctors, nutritionists, dietitians, public health officials, epidemiologists, who immediately then correct the narrative, because you all can do it faster than journalists often, because I interview experts all day long, but I am not someone who can talk to someone about the makeup of vaccines. I don't know that off the top of my head. But someone who studies vaccines can immediately go on social media and say, actually, this reel that's going on right now is wrong. And there are a lot of people who have huge followings who are doing that and trying to correct the narrative. I know they're exhausted. But I think that's so important because people are pretending to be public health experts on social media who just aren't. So we need the real public health people to show up and combat this. And I think when it comes to journalists, I know you mentioned that, you got called about, I think it was intermittent fasting and felt like maybe the publication legitimized it. But I do think there is also importance of talking about these things, because I know at HuffPost, a lot of our readers are older, may not be on social media as much as 20s, 30s, even 40s. So it's helpful for those people to after the fact get this information, where it's maybe their granddaughter 2 weeks after a viral reel tells them hey, grandma, did you know that this ingredient is bad for you, but this one's good? It's then the grandma might be able to say oh, actually, I read on HuffPost that this was trending online and you're wrong. This is my hope. This is what I hope happens. But I do really think that happens, because I don't think necessarily our 65-year-old reader is on Instagram or TikTok as much as I am. So they may not be seeing it the same way, but they may still be hearing about it from grandkids or kids or neighbors or at work or something. So I do think it's still important. And then when you take it a step further, it's certainly important for journalists to debunk everything, any misinformation, disinformation that MAHA is spreading, because that's coming from the highest powers out there. And it's so important to make sure those ideas don't get legitimized, and that we're talking to doctors and nutritionists and nurses and whoever, researchers, to get the real information out there. Because clearly, once again, the things that are the fear mongering or the lies, those are what spread really fast.
Our psychology. We'll have to have a psychologist on to figure us out there, because it's wild. Probably just because it's scary, and fear is a great motivator, great short-term motivator.
It is. And we also we want black and white information, because life is hard, life is stressful, it's complicated. So it's so much easier to not have to think about the quote unquote right choice. It's so much easier to be oh, the right choice is the one that says non-toxic, or the right choice is the one that says organic, when it's actually so much more complicated than that. But we want the black and white, and that's what our brains crave.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end, even though I could keep you for another hour. So,
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. This was great. I feel like this was so fun, and I learned a lot from you. And yeah, I feel like this topic is near and dear to my heart and I have so much empathy for people because I have fallen for this, and I'm sure there are instances where I still do. So it's also like no shame to anyone who falls for this, right? It's like we all do. Mm-hmm. It's intentional.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope to bring you back.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to Jillian for coming on the show. This was a great conversation, and I'd love to hear more about your experiences with chemophobia. I'll post quotes from this interview on Instagram for your comments, and if you're not on social media, you can send those experiences to makingitawkwardpod@gmail.com. Until next time, friends, don't make your hair into a vinaigrette and make it awkward. This has been Making It Awkward. I'm Jessica Wilson, clinical dietitian. This is a fully independent podcast supported by the members of the Patreon community. When you join as a paid member, for as little as $3 a month, my dad will give you a shout out on the show. You can also support the show by rating it on your favorite podcast app, commenting on YouTube, and writing an Apple Podcast review. Again, you can email the pod at makingitawkwardpod@gmail.com. You can also buy awkward merch from my website, including shirts and stickers that say, I came, I saw, I made it awkward. And this podcast is edited by the fantastic Jen Jacobs, who uses regular shampoo. Yeah, I think that's all for today.